Hello, my gorgeous gossip crew, and welcome back to COCO Gossip, the only channel that brings you the receipts, the reads, and the real stories hiding behind the reality TV curtain. Today, we are strapping on our steel-toed boots and wading into the mud, both literal and metaphorical, of Coyote Pass. The topic, Kody Brown's last stand. We're asking the multi-million-dollar question. Can the Coyote Pass dream possibly survive the absolute train wreck that is the Brown family in 2024? Because let's be honest, that sprawling, undeveloped land in Flagstaff, Arizona was never just about building homes. From the moment they signed the papers, Coyote Pass became the family's unwilling lie detector. A dusty patch of Arizona dirt that has exposed every single crack in the Brown family foundation. It's a polygraph test where every needle jump represents a broken promise, a financial strain, or a shattered loyalty. It put their money under a microscope, revealing who had it, who needed it, and who was using it as leverage. It tested their loyalties, forcing them to literally choose sides on a parcel map. It blew up their timelines, turning a 5-year plan into a forever fantasy. And it got tangled in a web of permits, politics, and patriarchal proclamations that have left it, well, exactly as it was the day they bought it. Just a little bit sadder. Now, before we bring in our first piece of evidence, I have a request. If you live for the receipts, the deep dives, and the drama the cameras don't show you, then you found your people. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell so you don't miss a single update. If you love receipt-driven deep dives that connect the dots no one else is seeing, this is your channel. Your subscription tells the YouTube gods that we are a serious, dedicated crew. So go on, make it official. I'll wait. Done? Perfect. Now let's get to work. The receipts. Exhibit A, the money, the maps, and the meetings. To understand why this land is a monument to dysfunction, we have to start with the cold, hard facts. The receipts, as we call them here. Our first receipt is the purchase itself. Back in June of 2018, the Brown family, high on the fumes of their Flagstaff fantasy, purchased 4 parcels of land totaling just over 14 acres for a whopping $820,000. They were giddy, they were united, or so we were told. Cody was selling them a vision of a polygamist paradise, ponds, gardens, grandkids running from house to house. But the money was messy from day one. To make that purchase, they had to take out a loan, and they split the property into parcels with different ownership structures. This map right here is our second receipt. It looks innocent enough, but this was the blueprint for disaster. By dividing the land and putting individual wives' names on deeds with Cody, it was never truly a communal property. It was a collection of adjacent properties owned by a dissolving business partnership. It baked the inequality right into the soil. Janelle and Mary's parcels were the largest, over 4 acres each. Christine and Robyn got the smaller, 2.5-ish acre lots. And from the moment this map was drawn, the arguments began. Clip of the family meeting on the land, pointing and arguing over who gets which lot. Focus on Mary's frustration about being denied the lot with the trees. Big Cody, I'm trying to make everybody happy. It's this impossible juggling act. Mary, but I just want the trees. Why can't I have the trees? Robyn, well, that's the pond, Mary. The pond is for everyone. Oh, the infamous pond, or as I call it, the puddle of Cody's broken promises. Robyn immediately frames the best part of Mary's desired lot as a communal space, effectively vetoing Mary's choice before it could even be considered. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a power play. Robyn, positioned as the de facto head wife, was already curating the family's shared resources from the plot she wanted. Receipt number 3, the hierarchy was always more important than the individual happiness of the wives. But let's talk about the money trail because it gets even messier. To pay off the land, they needed cash infusions. And who had the cash? Christine. Christine explained she gave the family the down payment for her Flagstaff house so they could pay off Coyote Pass to Justine. We were drowning in the land. I told Cody, take the money, pay off the land. It was my only way to get to my house. Let's pause here. This is a critical receipt. Christine had to essentially buy her own freedom to build a house off the property by liquidating her assets to pay for the property she would never, ever live on. The family, primarily Kody and Robyn, who held the most financial power and the least liquid assets at the time, used Christine's nest egg to secure their shared dream. It was a transaction disguised as family unity. And now for our first insider report. A source very close to the production crew at the time shared something with us that never made it to air. During the tense period of paying off the land, there was an enormous off-camera argument between Kody, Christine, and Robyn. The report alleges that the initial plan was for all 4 wives to liquidate some assets to contribute to the payoff. Janelle had her Vegas home equity, Mary had hers, but according to our source, Robyn resisted, claiming that moving so many times had left her financially vulnerable and that her and Kody's money was tied up. Well, it was just tied up. The pressure then fell squarely on Christine, who felt she had no choice. Our source claims Christine was heard saying, "It feels like I'm the family bank, but I don't get a vote on the board of directors." This alleged argument created a wound that never healed and directly contributed to her final decision to leave. It wasn't just about Kody's absence. It was about feeling like an ATM for a dream she no longer believed in. Again, that's a report, but it certainly connects the dots we've seen on screen, doesn't it? It reframes Christine's contribution from a noble sacrifice to a financial ultimatum. The final receipt in this section is the lack of progress itself. Years have passed, and not a single shovel has broken ground. The only development has been Janelle's temporary RV placement, which itself became a source of major conflict. Janelle struggles with her RV, Kody complaining about her independence, and the conversations about the lack of water and septic. The land has no utilities, no water, no sewer, no electricity. Getting that infrastructure in place would cost, by their own admission, hundreds of thousands of dollars, money they clearly don't have. Or, if they do have it, they're choosing not to spend it on this project. Every excuse, from city permits to COVID delays to family squabbles, has been used to mask the fundamental truth. They were financially and emotionally bankrupt long before they even bought this land. So, the receipts are clear: a messy purchase, a divisive map, transactional funding, and zero progress. This isn't a foundation for a dream home, it's a paper trail of a nightmare. Power of proof. The timeline of decay. Now that we have the receipts, let's lay them out in order. This is the power of proof. When you see the timeline of Coyote Pass, you realize this dream wasn't just stalled. It was doomed from the start. June 2018, the purchase, the high point. The family buys the $820,000 property. The narrative is one of hope, a permanent home after the chaos of the Las Vegas cul-de-sac. Kody is in his element, selling a vision he likely believes at this moment is possible. Late 2018, early 2019, the one-house plan. Kody passionately presents his one big house model to his horrified wives. This was the first and perhaps most crucial stress test of the Coyote Pass dream. Kody's vision was a single, massive, polygamous mansion. It was his patriarchal fantasy made manifest. One building, one king, with his 4 queen vassals in their separate wings. Kody Tim. The whole idea is that we are one family. This house confirms it in a way that the cul-de-sac never did. The wives' reactions were telling. Christine was a hard, unequivocal no. She had tasted freedom in her own Vegas home and was never going back to the basement wife days of Lehigh. Janelle, ever the pragmatist, was lukewarm but willing to consider it. Mary was noncommittal, and Robyn, Kody's ever-loyal partner, was the only one who seemed genuinely on board. This moment was the death of the communal dream. The one-house plan was rejected, and with it, the core premise of Kody's vision. From this point forward, Coyote Pass was no longer about building one big family home. It was about building 4 separate homes for 4 increasingly separate families who just happened to share a property line. The project was already fractured. 2020, the COVID stall, the pandemic hits, and suddenly the lack of progress has a convenient external excuse. We can't get permits. Construction costs are too high. We can't meet with contractors. While these were legitimate global issues, for the Browns, it was a godsend. It allowed them to kick the can down the road without having to admit the real reasons for the delay. They had no money, no consensus, and no leadership. COVID didn't stop the project. It just gave them a script to read from. 2021, the big payoff and the first crack. This is the year Christine makes her fateful contribution to pay off the land loan. On the surface, it's a victory. They own the land outright, no more bank payments. But as we discussed, this was a Pyrrhic victory. Christine paid her dues and then realized she had no interest in the club anymore. By November 2021, she publicly announces she has left Cody. This is the first catastrophic crack in the foundation. How can you build a 4-home family compound when one of the families is already gone? The math literally doesn't work anymore. Christine's departure puts her parcel of land into a state of legal and emotional limbo. And this brings us to another exclusive theory from our COCO gossip think tank. We believe Christine's departure triggered a secret financial panic. Her name was on one of those parcels with Cody. To get her name off and extract her financial investment, the family had to come up with a buyout. Where did that money come from? Our theory is that Kody and Robyn took out a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit on their $1 million home, the one Christine's house sale helped them buy in the first place. Think about it. The timing fits. They suddenly needed a large sum of cash to pay Christine out for her share of the family assets, including her investment in Coyote Pass. There was no on-screen discussion of a sudden windfall of cash. The most logical source would be leveraging the only significant asset they had full control over, Robyn's mansion. This move, if true, would have further depleted their financial ability to ever build on the pass, effectively using their home equity to dismantle the family rather than build it. It's a vicious cycle of robbing Peter to pay. The wife who is leaving Peter. 2022, 2023, the great exodus, the dam breaks. Following Christine's lead, Janelle separates from Cody. Mary is officially pushed out. The 4-home dream is now, at best, a 1-home and maybe a guest house for Janelle if she slucky dream. The timeline tells a story of steady decay, a slow-motion collapse disguised by grand pronouncements and external excuses. Every single milestone after the initial purchase was a step away from the goal, not towards it. The dream didn't just die. It was actively, if perhaps unconsciously, suffocated by the very people who claimed to want it most. The courtroom, opening arguments. All right, COCO crew. We've reviewed the receipts and the timeline. Now, let's step into the COCO gossip courtroom. In this courtroom, we put theories on trial. Today's case, the people versus the Coyote Pass dream. Is this project still viable, or is it legally, financially, and emotionally deceased? First, let's hear the opening arguments for the defense, representing Kody Brown, and the lingering hope for a family compound. Let's call it Team Keep the Dream Alive. The defense attorney, if it were Cody himself, would stand up and argue 3 main points. Point 1, it's an asset, not a failure. Cody's first argument would be purely financial. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he says, this isn't a vacant lot, it's a valuable real estate asset. He would argue that even if they never build, they haven't lost money. Flagstaff real estate has appreciated significantly since 2018. The $820,000 they spent has likely grown into a much larger number. He would frame the property not as a failed housing project, but as a savvy investment portfolio. Holding on to it allows its value to continue to grow. Selling it now would be premature. He would paint the lack of development not as incompetence, but as a patient, strategic financial hold. It's a classic spin move. It can rebrand your failure as a deliberate investment strategy. Point 2, the patriarchal promise. Cody's second argument would be more emotional, more rooted in his fundamentalist beliefs. He would argue that Coyote Pass is more than just land. It's a physical representation of his covenant, his patriarchal duty. Cody talking about being the head of the family, his vision, and leaving a legacy for his children. Urito. This is about our family culture. It's about our legacy. Where will our kids come to visit? Where will our grandkids play? He would argue that selling the land would be tantamount to admitting his entire life's mission has failed. It would be a public declaration that the Brown family, as he envisioned it, is dead and buried. For Cody, that land is the last piece of physical evidence that the big family ever truly existed. Holding on to it, even in its undeveloped state, allows him to keep the idea of the family on life support. It's a promise to his children, at least the ones still speaking to him, that there is a central place for them, a home base, even if it's just a field of weeds and a nice view. The Robyn factor in the long game. The defense's final and most subtle argument is this: the dream isn't dead, it has just downsized. Let's be real. The family Kody is most concerned with now is his family with Robyn. Kody would never admit this in court, but his actions speak for him. The dream may now be to simply build one house for himself and Robyn, and maybe a small casita nearby for Janelle to visit, and perhaps another for his and Robyn's kids to use in the future. This is the long game. Wait for the drama, settle the financial separations with Christine and Janelle, let Mary fade into the background, and then, when the dust settles, what's left? Kody, Robyn, and a whole lot of land. In this version of the future, they can finally build their forever home in peace, funded by the eventual sale of the other parcels. He's not holding on for the old family, he's holding on for his new one. The dream isn't dead, it has simply been revised to a monogamous plus model. So that's the case for the defense. It's a smart investment, it's a symbolic patriarchal legacy, and it's the future home for the only family he has left. A compelling argument if you're living in Kody's world. But the prosecution is about to take the floor, and their case is built on a mountain of evidence suggesting this dream is not only dead, but is actively harming the survivors. And that is where we are going to leave part 1. We laid out the receipts, walked through the timeline of decay, and heard Kody's defense. In part 2, we will hear the devastating case for the opposition. We will put the wives on the witness stand, using their own words to testify for and against the dream. We will connect the dots on some explosive theories about a quiet listing and a secret refinance. And finally, this court will deliver its ruling. Will they sell, build, or mothball this property forever? You are not going to want to miss it. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you right back here for the stunning conclusion. Welcome back to the COCO Gossip Courtroom, my gorgeous gossip crew. In part 1, we laid out the damning paper trail of Coyote Pass and heard the defense for Kody Brown's last stand. He argues the land is a valuable asset, a symbol of his patriarchal legacy, and the future site of a downsized dream for him and Robyn. A compelling story if you ignore it. Well, everything else. Now, it's time for the prosecution to present its case. Representing reality, logic, and the exiled wives, Team Let It Go is ready to dismantle Kody's arguments piece by piece. Let the cross-examination begin. The courtroom, the prosecution's devastating rebuttal. The prosecution rises, and they don't waste any time. They address the jury, that's you, by the way, and attack the defense's case with cold, hard logic. Rebuttal to point 1, it's a valuable asset. The prosecution scoffs. A valuable asset? They'd say. An asset is only valuable if you can use it or liquidate it. Coyote Pass is neither. They would argue that the land is a financial black hole. First, there are the carrying costs. Every year, thousands of dollars in property taxes are due to Coconino County. While they form their own little HOA to manage the property, any shared costs, like road maintenance, if they ever built one, would come out of their own pockets. But the biggest financial drain is something economists call opportunity cost. That $820,000 plus Christine's payoff contribution is capital that has been frozen for years. It's money that Janelle could have used for a down payment on a proper home for her in Savannah. It's money Christine could have rolled into her new life in Utah. It's money Mary could be using to secure her own independent future. Instead, it's all tied up in Kody's field of dreams, held hostage by his ego. So, calling it an asset is a half-truth. It's an illiquid, non-performing asset that is actively preventing 3 other women from moving on with their financial lives. It's not an investment portfolio, it's a prison for their money. Rebuttal to point 2, the patriarchal promise. The prosecution's tone would turn from financial to deeply personal here. The defense speaks of a patriarchal promise of a legacy, they'd argue, their voice dripping with disdain. But a legacy is built on success, not failure. A promise is kept, not broken. They would argue that the land is no longer a symbol of family unity. It is a monument to family destruction. It's the place where the one-house dream died. It's the place where Janelle was left to struggle in an RV while Cody stayed in a mansion. It's the place Mary wanders alone, dreaming of trees she'll never have. It's the place Christine paid for and then fled from. What kind of legacy is that? It's a legacy of broken promises. It's a testament to Cody's inability to lead. The grand patriarchal promise of providing for and protecting his family resulted in 3 of his wives leaving and the land sitting barren. Holding on to it isn't preserving a legacy, it's clinging to the wreckage of a shipwreck and calling it a yacht. It is, frankly, a public billboard advertising his failure as a patriarch. Rebuttal to point 3, the long game for Robyn. Finally, the prosecution would address the unspoken truth in the room. The defense speaks of a downsized dream, they would say, looking directly at where Kody and Robyn would be sitting. Let us call it what it is, a hostile takeover. The prosecution would argue that holding on to all 14-plus acres with the secret intention of one day building a single home for Kody and Robyn is the most financially illogical and morally reprehensible strategy of all. It requires everyone else's money to remain tied up for an indefinite number of years until Kody and Robyn are ready. This isn't a long game, it's a financial siege. He's starving out his former partners. By refusing to sell, Kody is effectively using Christine, Janelle, and Mary's financial stake in the property as an involuntary, interest-free loan to fund his and Robyn's future. It's the ultimate act of financial control. The dream isn't being kept alive. It's being held hostage to serve the needs of 2 people at the expense of everyone else. The prosecution rests its case, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. The arguments are devastatingly simple. The land is a financial drain, a symbol of failure, and a tool of financial control. On the witness stand, the wives testify. The prosecution has made its case, but now it's time to hear from the key witnesses. Their own words, their own experiences, will serve as the most powerful testimony in this trial. First to the stand, Christine Brown. When the prosecution calls Christine, she walks to the stand with the confidence we rarely saw in the early seasons. Her testimony is clear, concise, and focused on one thing: closing this chapter for good. The prosecution asks, Mrs. Brown, or should I say Ms. Woolley, can you describe your financial contribution to the Coyote Pass property? Christine explains how the money from her Lehigh house sale went to the family, and then the money from her Vegas house sale went to paying off the debt. Orstein knew. I have no intention of living on that property. I was the one who gave the money to pay it off. I know that. But I don't want it. Her testimony is damning. She confirms she was the family's financial savior, injecting the cash needed to secure the land. The prosecution follows up. And what did you get in return for that investment? Christine's answer is simple. Nothing. I got nothing. In fact, it became a chain that kept me tied to a situation I needed to leave. Her testimony paints a picture of a woman who had to buy her own freedom twice. First, by giving them the money to get her Flagstaff house, and second, by leaving it all behind. She has no emotional attachment to the land. For her, it's just an asset on a balance sheet that needs to be liquidated. Now, for an insider report that adds a layer of legal drama to Christine's testimony. A source with ties to the Brown family's legal dealings alleges that, in late 2023, Christine's legal team sent a formal demand letter to Kody and Robyn. The letter reportedly outlined her financial contributions to the family pot over the last decade, including her estimated equity in Coyote Pass, and demanded a formal buyout plan and payment schedule. According to this source, the letter was met with silence for weeks, followed by a lowball offer from Cody's side that was, in the source's words, insulting. This alleged legal back and forth is happening entirely off camera and is the real reason for the mounting tension. Christine isn't just moving on. She's legally and systematically extracting herself, and Coyote Pass is the last major hurdle. Next to the stand, the prosecution calls Janelle Brown. Janelle's testimony is, in many ways, the most heartbreaking. She was the one who truly tried to make Coyote Pass a reality. She was the boots on the ground. The prosecution asks, Ms. Brown, what were your intentions for the Coyote Pass property? Janelle said, I was going to be the first one to break ground. I put my trailer on it. I wanted to get things moving, but nothing ever happened. It was always, well, we got to pay this off first. We got to do this first. It was always something. Her testimony reveals a deep betrayal. She, the pragmatic and logical one, made a concrete plan. She sacrificed comfort to live in an RV to save money and get the ball rolling. And what was her reward? She was belittled by Cody, left without support, and ultimately forced to abandon her post. He saw her independence as a threat, not a contribution. The prosecution asks, "Why do you think construction never started?" Janelle, "I don't know if he wants me to build. I really don't." That's the core of it. Janelle's testimony proves that the project wasn't stalled by permits or money, but by Cody's need for control. The moment a wife took initiative, he sabotaged it. Janelle's dream wasn't just delayed, it was actively blocked. Her testimony proves the project is unworkable not for financial reasons, but because the family's leader is incapable of leading. Finally, the prosecution calls a hostile witness, Robyn Brown. Robyn takes the stand, already dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Her testimony is a masterclass in deflection and emotional manipulation. The prosecution asks, "Mrs. Brown, what does Coyote Pass represent to you?" Robyn cried and said, "I just don't understand why they're quitting. I don't know what to do. I still have this dream of our family being together, the whole family picture." Her testimony is all about the dream and the family picture, but the prosecution would press her. "Mrs. Brown, while you were dreaming of a porch, where were you living?" The answer, $1 million home with plenty of space. "And while Janelle was in an RV on the property, how many times did you or your husband stay there with her to help?" The answer, 0. The prosecution would argue that Robyn's testimony is a performance. She mourns the loss of a fantasy she never had to sacrifice for. Her tears are not for the loss of the family, but for the loss of the image of the family, an image that benefited her by providing a built-in support system and the financial backing of 3 other working women. And here's our exclusive theory on Robyn's testimony. We believe Robyn is the primary force preventing the sale of Coyote Pass, for one simple reason: control. As long as the family's assets are tied up in that land, Christine and Janelle cannot be truly financially free. It keeps them tethered. It forces them to negotiate with Cody, and by extension with her. Selling the land would mean a huge payout to the ex-wives, empowering them to build bigger, better lives without the Browns. That is Robyn's ultimate nightmare, seeing Christine and Janelle thrive after leaving. Keeping the land is not about preserving a dream, it's about punishing those who abandoned it. Her testimony is not a plea for unity, it's a filibuster to delay the inevitable financial liberation of her former sister wives. The witnesses have spoken. Their words paint a clear picture of financial sacrifice, practical betrayal, and manipulative grief. The case against the Coyote Pass dream is overwhelming. Past callback. The patriarchy paradox. To truly understand why this dream was destined to fail, we need to look at the central contradiction of its leader. Kody Brown's entire justification for his authority is patriarchy, but his definition of the word is convenient. On one hand, you have the patriarch. Cody angry. "I'm the head of this family. You will respect me. I'm going to be the head of my household again, and at it I don't care what anybody thinks about it." This is the Cody who demands unwavering loyalty, the Cody who believes his word should be law. This is the Cody who presented the one-house plan and was genuinely shocked when his wives didn't just fall in line. When Christine said no, it wasn't a disagreement, it was an act of defiance against his God-given authority. But then, you have the collaborator, Keste. "We have to make this decision as a family. Everybody has to be on board. It's about communication, it's about making sure everyone feels heard." This is Cody, who, when things are going his way, presents himself as a modern, sensitive, collaborative leader. He performs the role of a CEO gathering input from his board of directors. Here's the paradox. Cody wants the authority of a patriarch but refuses the responsibility. A true leader, a true patriarch in the idealized sense he preaches, would have taken charge of the Coyote Pass project. He would have secured the financing, He would have managed the contractors, he would have created a realistic budget and timeline, he would have done the work to provide the homes he promised his wives. Instead, he did nothing. He presented a fantasy, and when it was rejected, he sulked. When his wives tried to move forward with a different plan, he stalled and obstructed them. Coyote Pass failed because Kody's leadership is a sham. It's not about leading the family to a promised land. It's about demanding they follow him, even when he's walking in circles in a muddy field. The land sits empty because he wanted the crown of a king without the burden of actually governing the kingdom. Connecting the dots, the grand conspiracy theories. We've heard the testimony, we've analyzed the psychology. Now, let's get into the COCO gossip specialty, connecting the dots that are hiding in plain sight. What is really happening with that land right now? We have 3 competing theories. Theory 1, the quiet listing preparation. This theory suggests that Kody and Robyn are not as idle as they appear. The pressure from Christine's legal team and Janelle's growing impatience is forcing their hand, but they can't afford the public humiliation of a for sale sign going up, so they're making moves in the shadows. This theory is fueled by our insider report of the week. A real estate enthusiast in Flagstaff, a fan of our channel, sent us a tip. They claimed to have seen a commercial surveying drone making multiple passes over the property in early spring. It wasn't a TLC production drone, it looked like the kind used for creating high-end real estate listings and topographical maps for developers. The theory is this: Kody has hired a high-end commercial realtor to prepare a pocket listing package. They're getting appraisals, surveys, and marketing materials ready so they can quietly shop the property to developers without ever putting it on the public MLS. This would allow them to control the narrative, avoid public spectacle, and potentially get a better price by selling it as a single package for a small housing development. It's a move to save face while preparing for the inevitable surrender. Theory 2, the disastrous refinance domino effect. This theory is darker and builds on what we discussed in part 1. It posits that Kody and Robyn are in a deep financial hole of their own making. To pay Christine her initial buyout for her Flagstaff home equity, they took out a massive home equity line of credit, HELOC, on Robyn's mansion. But now, Christine wants her share of Coyote Pass. They don't have the cash. They can't borrow any more against their house. So they're stuck. They can't sell the land because the proceeds would immediately be seized by Christine and Janelle, leaving Kody and Robyn with nothing to build their own dream house. And they can't afford to build because their monthly mortgage/HELOC payment is, according to one of our financial insiders, absolutely suffocating. In this scenario, they are paralyzed. Holding onto the land is their only move because selling it means admitting they are broke and handing over the last of the family's major assets to the ex-wives. They are in financial checkmate and the land is the frozen king on the board. Theory 3, holding for the storyline. This is the most cynical and therefore probably the most realistic theory. The conflict is the show. Coyote Pass is not a failed housing project. It is a successful television set. Think about it. What are Sister Wives about now? It's about the financial and emotional fallout of divorces. The single greatest point of contention, the largest shared asset they all must fight over, is Coyote Pass. It guarantees drama. It guarantees a reason for Kody to interact with Janelle. It guarantees scenes where lawyers are mentioned. It guarantees tearful confessionals from Robyn about the lost dream. Selling the property would resolve the show's central conflict. It would be the series finale. By keeping the land in a state of perpetual limbo, Kody, Robyn, and even TLC itself ensure there is a reason to keep the cameras rolling for another season. They are not holding on to land, they are holding on to a paycheck. The weeds on that property are literally paying for Robyn's Victoria's Secret credit card bill. The ruling. This court has reviewed the evidence, heard the testimony, and considered the theories. The question before us was, can the Coyote Pass dream survive? It is now time for a ruling. We will consider the 3 potential outcomes: A, sell, B, partial build, or C, mothball, on the matter of option C, to mothball the property. This court finds that this is the current de facto reality. Driven by a combination of financial paralysis, Theory 2, and a cynical need for a storyline, and Theory 3, the property is being held in indefinite limbo. It is a strategy of inaction, serving only the short-term interests of Kody, Robyn, and the network. However, as a long-term solution, it is unsustainable and emotionally corrosive to all involved. On the matter of option B, a partial build. This court finds this option to be a fantasy. This is Kody and Robyn's dream scenario, where they get to keep the choicest parts of the land and build their forever home, but it is utterly unworkable. It would require the other wives to agree to sell off their portions piecemeal, a complex and messy process. More importantly, it is fundamentally unjust, as it prioritizes the desires of the couple who contributed the least financially and practically to the project. This option is hereby dismissed as delusional, which brings us to the final ruling. On the matter of option A, to sell the entire property, this court has reviewed the mountain of evidence, the financial entanglements, the emotional betrayals, the dissolution of the family unit, and the complete lack of a unified vision. The conclusion is inescapable. The Coyote Pass dream is dead. It died the moment the one-house plan was rejected. It was buried when Christine left, and the tombstone was carved when Janelle and Mary followed. Clinging to the land is no longer an act of hope. It is an act of denial and financial abuse. Therefore, this court rules that the only logical, ethical, and emotionally intelligent path forward is the immediate sale of all parcels of land at Coyote Pass. The proceeds must be divided equitably among Kody and his former wives, according to their legal stakes and documented financial contributions. This is the only way to sever the final chains that bind these women to a man and a lifestyle that has caused them profound pain. It is the only way to give Christine, Janelle, and Mary the financial freedom they are owed. It is the only way to close this chapter. The dream must be liquidated so that real lives can begin. The verdict is in. The ruling is clear. But a court order is one thing, making it happen is another. Kody Brown will not let go of his last scrap of land, his last symbol of power, without a fight. The battle for Coyote Pass is far from over. Which leads us to one final tantalizing question. Imagine a secret appraisal, commissioned by Christine's legal team, was delivered tomorrow. An official, legally binding document stating the current market value of that land. What would it reveal? It wouldn't just be a number, say 1.2 or $1.5 million. No, it would reveal much more. It would reveal the exact dollar amount that Janelle is entitled to, giving her the power to walk away and buy a home. It would reveal the final check Kody must write to Christine to be rid of her forever. It would reveal the cold, hard number that represents the total financial cost of Kody's failure. That appraisal wouldn't be a document. It would be a weapon. A trigger for the final war over the Brown family fortune. The question isn't what the land is worth. The question is, who will finally have the power to force the sale and claim their share? We'll be watching. Thank you for joining me in the COCO Gossip Courtroom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive with every Sister Wives fan you know. Until next time, stay gorgeous and keep your receipts.